Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Wednesday, the 2nd of July. You're tuned into our mid-morning newscast here on ARIRANG TV. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. In a landmark shift in its defense policy, Japan has decided to allow its military to aid friendly nations under attack. Korea urges Japan to carry out follow-up measures in a transparent manner. Seoul rejects Pyongyang's proposal to halt all hostile military acts between the two Koreas, calling on the North to take steps towards denuclearization rather than making insincere peace gestures. Plus, Korea posts record exports in the first half of the year thanks to recoveries in the US and other advanced economies, but experts warn the strengthening Korean won will hurt the country's competitiveness. Now, we start with some news just coming in. North Korea has fired 2 more short-range projectiles. You don't know exactly what kind of missiles they are quite yet, into the East Sea. This is significant, of course, because Chinese President Xi Jinping is expected in Seoul on Thursday for a 2-day state visit. We'll bring you more details on this story as we get it. But our first headline of the day is the landmark decision out of Tokyo, where the cabinet has given the green light for a historic shift in Japan's military policy. Gone is a decades-long ban on the right to collective self-defense, meaning Japanese troops will now be allowed to fight overseas in defense of friendly nations. Now, Korea is urging the Abe administration to adhere to the basic spirit of the pacifist constitution and carry out follow-up measures in a transparent manner. Song Ji-son reports.
A ban that dates back to the end of World War II lifted. In a significant recasting of military policy away from its pacifist policies, the Abe administration has reclaimed the right to send its soldiers into battle even when the country is not under direct attack. Following approval by lawmakers on Tuesday, the cabinet adopted a resolution dropping a ban that has kept the military from fighting overseas since World War II. This means Japanese troops will be able to come to the aid of allies if they come under attack from a common enemy, even if Japan is not the subject of the attack. Tokyo will also be able to take on a greater role in UN peacekeeping missions.
For the sake of world stability and peace, Japan will contribute more than it has up to this point.
After losing World War II, Japan was forced to dismantle its military and adopt a constitution that allows the use of arms only in the event it is attacked on its territory. But interpretations of the constitution have since been stretched over the years to allow for the strengthening of Japan's self-defense forces. Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has been aggressively pursuing the change since taking office. But Korea and China, major victims of Japan's past wartime aggression, have expressed opposition.
The Japanese government must proceed in a transparent manner that guarantees peace and stability in the region. And at the same time, it must also earn its neighbors' trust by putting an end to its distortion of past wrongdoings.
South Korea's foreign ministry has said the Japanese forces will not be allowed on the Korean peninsula without prior consent. Song Ji-son, ARIRANG News.
Staying with Japan's decision to permit itself a greater military role in Asia, the US government says it welcomes the Abe administration's decision to unshackle itself from its decades-long war-renouncing constitution. China, on the other hand, which, like Korea, has painful memories of Japan's past military aggression, has expressed its concerns. Park Ji-won reports.
China's foreign ministry has expressed concerns over the Abe administration's move, saying it has taken an unprecedented measure that greatly changes Japan's military security policies.
We can't help thinking Japan would change the path of peaceful development that it has stuck to since the end of World War II. We also have noticed that Tokyo's attempt to exercise the right to collective self-defense has been met by strong opposition within Japan. The direction taken by Japan will be decided by the Japanese people in the end.
In a statement Tuesday, U.S. Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel said it was an important step for Japan to take a positive role in international security cooperation efforts. The White House also welcomed the move.
We would make clear is that we believe that this is good potentially for our alliance.
Analysts say a stronger Japanese role serves the U.S. interests in the region as it should contain China's rising influence in Northeast Asia. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Abe's reinterpretation of the country's pacifist constitution has gone down badly with many inside Japan. Japan's opposition blocs and protesters are demanding that Abe and the ruling coalition go back on their decision, saying the public was never consulted on an issue that destroys the country's constitution. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
Now, North Korea and Japan have been busy hammering out the details of a previous deal that promises to reopen an investigation into the abductions of Japanese nationals decades ago. Tuesday's meeting in the Chinese capital of Beijing went ahead. In fact, despite speculation Japan might pull out in protest of North Korea's launch of 2 short-range missiles over the last weekend. Yulian reports.
Tuesday's high-level meeting between Japan and North Korea began with an exchange of strong words over Pyongyang's firing of 2 short-range missiles into the East Sea between the two nations over the weekend. In his opening remarks, Japan's chief delegate to the talks, Junichi Ihara, launched a strong protest against the launch, calling it a violation of UN Security Council resolutions. His North Korean counterpart Song Il-ho said Pyongyang has made it clear that they do not recognize the resolutions and insisted that the test firings were safe and fully consistent with maintaining peace and stability in the region. Despite the tensions, the two countries did agree to continue constructive talks on reinvestigating the abduction of Japanese nationals by North Korean agents in the 1970s and 80s. In a diplomatic breakthrough, the two countries struck a deal in Stockholm last month on reopening the abduction probe. In return, Japan has promised to lift some sanctions and resume humanitarian aid to North Korea. Pyongyang on Tuesday reportedly briefed Japan about the special investigative team it has assembled to look into the Japanese abductee issue. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is looking over the details and is expected to decide on Wednesday whether his government will lift partial sanctions on the communist state, and if so, to what scale. Yurian, ARIRANG News.
South Korea has turned down a proposal by North Korea to end all cross-border hostilities, which they say includes regular military drills with the United States. Seoul says peace can only be realized once Pyongyang takes serious steps to dismantle its nuclear program. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
South Korea rejected on Tuesday North Korea's so-called special proposal to end all military hostilities between the two Koreas. On Monday, the North proposed to halt cross-border slandering and military provocations starting Friday and called for upcoming joint military drills between Seoul and Washington to be canceled. Sound familiar? The regime had made a similar proposal earlier this year in what it called an important proposal.
North Korea proposed in January to end cross-border slandering but broke the inter-Korean agreement shortly thereafter and has been hurling offensive remarks at our leader and launching provocations ever since.
Calling the latest proposal nonsense and insincere, Seoul's Unification Ministry said North Korea's nuclear and missile development programs are the biggest threats on the Korean peninsula. The ministry said North Korea must let go of its nuclear program if it really wants lasting peace in the region. On what had motivated Pyongyang to make the sudden proposal, an official at the ministry said the regime may have been attempting to show its efforts at mending inter-Korean ties ahead of Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to Seoul this week. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
South Korea's new defense minister, Han Min-gu, has vowed that Seoul will immediately and forcefully respond to any further North Korean provocations. The defense chief made the remarks on Tuesday during a visit to Yeonpyeong-do and Baekryong-do Islands, located just south of the de facto western sea border between the two Koreas. Han said the military has orders to launch immediate counterattacks in case of provocations, not only the source of the provocation, but also to supporting forces and military commanders. He stressed that if North Korea ever attempted another provocation like its shelling of Yeonpyeong-do Island, South Korea will effectively retaliate against the North. North Koreans' artillery attack on Yeonpyeong-do Island in November 2010 killed 4 South Koreans, including 2 civilians. Now, there's a big summit taking place in Seoul from Thursday. The leaders of South Korea and China will adopt a joint statement following that summit this week, which the Chinese Foreign Ministry says will include both countries' common perceptions on the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. In a press conference Tuesday, Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Yu Jong-min said ways to make the peninsula nuclear-free will be one of the main agendas of talks between South Korean President Park Geun-hye and Chinese President Xi Jinping. The minister says it's the Chinese government's basic policy to pursue the denuclearization of the peninsula and to keep peace and stability in the region by resolving matters peacefully. He added that as both countries are deeply concerned about Japan's perception of history, the two leaders will naturally touch on related issues as well. Chinese President Xi arrives in Seoul on Thursday for a 2-day visit.
Said that a team of South Korean...
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. ARIRANG News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers $15 billion. Now to some good news for the Korean economy, because Korean exports reached a record high in the first half of this year. This backed by strong shipments of mobile communication devices and semiconductors to advanced economies, including the United States. But there may be some dark clouds on the horizon, as our Connie Kim reports.
Korea's exports hit a new record high in terms of dollar value in the first half of this year, backed by the recovery in major economies. That means Korea sold close to $2.3 billion worth of goods overseas every day, up 4.5% on year. Exports to advanced economies played a major role in the jump. Shipments to the European Union rose by more than 11%, and those to the United States inched up about 8%. Shipments of mobile communication devices saw the steepest gains, followed by semiconductors and steel. But some experts are not excited about the data, as it's not as rosy as it sounds.
The 2.6% rise in exports is lower than expected. Emerging economies are catching up quickly with Korean technology, which still lags behind advanced nations. The strengthening of the won was also a factor in the lowering of the nation's total exports.
The strong Korean won, which is hurting Korean exporters' price competitiveness overseas, is a factor that kept the trade performance from meeting expectations. The Korean won gained more than 3% against the dollar in the first 6 months of this year. And it's a major culprit that's hurting the outlook for the Korean economy.
We were expecting exports to increase about 5 to 6% this year, but with the 2.6% growth in exports in the first half of this year, the growth rate is not expected to pick up. The export growth for this year is not expected to reach 5%.
Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Now, good news for drivers here in Korea, because tariffs on imported European autos have been lowered or completely eliminated as part of Korea's free trade agreement with the European Union, which entered its 4th year on Tuesday. Tariffs imposed on imported cars with an engine 1.5 litres or larger have been completely lifted, while tariffs levied on cars with smaller engines below 1.5 litres have been lowered from 4% to 2.6%. This means, to give you an idea of what the cost cutting might be, the price of a Volkswagen Phaeton will go down by just over $1,000, and the maximum price cut for a Mercedes-Benz here in Korea will amount to roughly $2,200. Korea's stock market is losing momentum, with the benchmark Kospi fluctuating by the smallest margin ever in the first 6 months of this year. Hwang Jie reports.
It's as if the Korean stock market has had its pause button pushed. The Korea Exchange says the nation's benchmark Kospi is losing its vitality, with market volatility in the first half of the year hitting a mere 0.6, its lowest point since 1990 when the market first opened. The closer the index is to zero, the more stagnant the market. The figure was at over 2 in the second half of 2011, but has continued on a downward trend ever since. And it's not just the dynamism, but also the number of transactions that remains subdued. The average daily transactions volume on the nation's main bourse came in at around 23 million in the first half of this year, marking the lowest level in 7.5 years. Analysts attribute the lackluster performance over the past 3 years to sluggish domestic demand and the slowing Chinese economy.
Korea is heavily dependent on exports to China. The nation's industries are also closely linked to those in China, so the slumping economy there had a major impact on the economy here.
Analysts add that the recent strength in the local currency trend has eroded the profitability of local companies and is keeping the stock market from perking up. But they also forecast better conditions in the second half. They say the global economy, more importantly the U.S. economy, is on a rebound trend, which will result in more robust exports for Korea, eventually raise local corporate profitability, and put some pep in the stock market's step. Hwang Jie, ARIRANG News.
Time now for a look through the international headlines we're following on this Wednesday morning. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim, standing by at the News Centre. Good morning to you, Eunice.
Hello, Mark.
Now, the bodies of the 3 Israeli teenagers that were killed recently have been laid to rest on Tuesday, in fact, and this comes as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has promised to hold the perpetrators responsible.
And Israel has maintained all along that the group responsible was the Palestinian faction Hamas, which has denied any involvement in this latest killing. Earlier this morning, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told the nation in a televised address, Hamas is responsible, Hamas will pay, Hamas will continue to pay for the kidnap and murder of the 3 young men. He also outlined the 3-pronged response, taking the murderers into custody, continuing to strike Hamas targets in the West Bank, and expanding the operation in Gaza as necessary. More than 30 airstrikes were launched on Hamas overnight on Monday through Tuesday, local time, and hours before Netanyahu attended the joint funeral ceremony for the 3 teens, their bodies wrapped in Israeli flags as thousands gathered to mourn. President Shimon Peres, whom you just saw there, called them 3 outstanding boys, sons of the entire nation. They were buried next to each other after the funeral at Modi'in. Travelers headed for the U.S. this summer could face tougher security procedures at airports, as U.S. federal authorities are considering stronger screening guidelines. The move would come as chaos grips Syria and Iraq, raising fears that it could create a safe haven for terrorist groups to plan, train, and recruit Westerners in their fight. Authorities are also concerned about a new type of bomb designed to bypass current screening methods. They believe the explosives are in the developing stages by terrorists from Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. In an unprecedented move, French police have detained former President Nicolas Sarkozy for questioning over suspicions he used his power illegally. He was grilled on whether he had pursued inside information from a high-ranking judge related to a campaign funding probe in exchange for the promise of a distinguished role in Monaco. Investigators also called in the judge in question as well as a second judge and Sarkozy's lawyer. Sarkozy has maintained the charges are politically motivated. They are being seen as a blow to the former leader's ambitions for another presidential run in 2017. 68 more people have fallen to the Ebola virus since last Monday. This according to the World Health Organization, which reported that the death toll tied to the deadly virus has risen to nearly 470, marking a 20% increase in just the past 10 days. It marks the largest ever outbreak infecting people in the West African states of Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. There is no cure for the hemorrhagic fever. It is spread by contact with infected people or animals via fluids such as urine, sweat, and blood.
And a good Wednesday morning to you all as we kick things off with the South Korean national football team, as the future of manager Hong Myung-bo might be decided sometime this week after the KFA stated that a meeting is scheduled. Now, according to a statement issued by the Korea Football Association, the president of the KFA, Chung Mong-gyu, will be meeting with the manager Hong Myung-bo to sit down and talk about his future. The KFA added that it's unfair to remove him from the post just because of the recent poor showing at the Brazil World Cup. Meanwhile, many experts still speculate that manager Hong Myung-bo will resign after the meeting. And now staying with football and continuing on with our 2014 Brazil World Cup coverage, as two more round of 16 matches took place earlier today, this including Argentina taking on Switzerland. So let's take a look at the highlights. Of course, both sides going back and forth in this match, and even after the 90 minutes, a scoreless 0-0 draw. With the match approaching 120th minute, it looked like another penalty shootout, but Angel Di Maria says no way as he sends one past the goalkeeper in the 118th minute, giving Argentina the 1-0 win as they advance to the semifinals. Meanwhile, USA taking on Belgium, both sides going very aggressive from the start, but a scoreless first half. Second half starts and they continue to go at it, and still scoreless match despite the many chances for both sides. But the extra time, Kevin De Bruyne scores in the 93rd, followed by Romelu Lukaku in the 105th. The Americans do add one in the second extra time, but the Belgians hang on to win this one 2-1 to advance to the next round. And now moving over to some Tuesday night's KBO action, the LG Twins get a walk-off win in the 11th inning over the Hanwha Eagles 1-0, with the Tucson Bears holding on to beat the Kia Tigers 4-3, and the NC Dinos win one over the SK Wyverns 5-4. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the Lotte Giants take on the Nexen Heroes. Now, first inning of the game, Park Jong-yoon RBI single to right gives the Lotte Giants the early 1-0 lead. But second inning, Kang Jong-ho at bat and drills this one to deep right center, and it's gone, and we're tied 1-1. Bottom of the third inning, Lotte up 2-1. Ho Do-han this time sends one to deep center, and there it goes. We're tied again 2-2. Same inning, Nexen up 4-2 this time. Kang Jong-ho at bat once again. That's number 24 on the season, and Nexen has the lead 6-2. Now, fifth inning of the game, Choi Jun-suk deep to right and back. Gone, it's 6-3. Sixth inning, Chung-hoon this time, another dinger and deficit cut, 6-4. But wait a minute, seventh inning, Kang Min-ho with a man on, and hello and goodbye, a two-run shot, and we're tied 6-6. But now the Nexen Heroes answer back with 6 runs in the bottom of the seventh as they win the slugfest 12-7, your final score. And now finishing things off with some exciting news for all the UFC fans in Asia, as Dana White, the president of Ultimate Fighting Championship, announced in a recent press conference that he's planning a tournament between Korea, China, and Japan. Now, Dana White, who's currently in Japan for the upcoming Fight Night event in Japan, stated that the UFC plans to hold an 8-month-long UFC tournament between fighters from the 3 nations. He added that, quote, "When you go into a market and you have thousands of years of history between people, it's a home run." Meanwhile, the UFC hopes to host their first event in Korea in the near future. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. Well, depends on where you are. You could expect mix of sun, clouds, and monsoon rain today. Well, as we can see, the rain clouds are moving northbound directions, dropping showers to Jeju already. And soon, most of the southern coast will see showers. So 20 to 80 millimeters of precipitation is expected down south, and 5 to 40 millimeters will be seen for the central region. While for the upper parts, it will be more like sporadic showers today. And with this band of showers, we'll get a relief from the heat today. Highs will be a tad lower than yesterday. And it seems like upper parts of the peninsula will be affected by a monsoonal front this week. Nationwide monsoon showers are expected, including here in Seoul tomorrow, and it will rain on Sunday as well. So please do keep that in mind, and let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The high in the capital will rise to 30, while Daegu and Gwangju will have a daily high of 28 and 27, and Busan should make it to 24 later in the afternoon. Now, for other regions, down on Jeju and Daejeon should see a high of 22 and 29, while Dokdo will reach 25. Well, that's all for me at this hour, but I'll be back with more updates afternoon.
Thank you very much, Jiyeon, and that's all we have for now. We'll be back with another newscast at noon Korea time. Until then, goodbye.